And thank you to those of you who've joined the call today. So we're going to be discussing the prayers to Tulsi Maharani that we sing in the morning program. Balaram Nityananda has kindly agreed to lead us in those prayers, and I'll put the words on the screen. And then we're going to start to explore something about the significance of Tulsi Maharani, who's none other than Vrinda Devi, and just touch upon some of the philosophical truths in the prayers that we sing in the morning. And just to bring up front, the purpose of this is to bring more conscious awareness and therefore more potency to our practice. The idea is very simple. In many cases, we perform devotional service with a certain degree of mechanical consideration. It's something that happens unconsciously, something that happens without us thinking. And one of the simplest ways to elevate that devotional service from the unconscious level to the level of pure awareness is to be aware and deliberate of the prayers that we're making, the significance of those prayers, why we recite those particular prayers. So we're going to discuss the Tulsi prayers that we sing, and I'm going to hand back over to Balaram Nityananda to lead us in, or to sing the prayers through. We won't sing it all in unison because when we try to do that on Zoom, it doesn't really work so well. So Balaram Nityananda will actually sing, and then after that, we will begin the discussion. Thank you. Over to you, Balaram.
Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Kesavasacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavati Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Kesavasacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavate Namo Namah Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Priyayai Kesavasacha Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavate Namo Namah Namo Tulsi Krishna Prayasi Namo Jeto Madashadana Daro Vancha Bhuna Jeto Mara Sharana Daro Vancha Bhuna Kripa Kori Guru Dare Vilas Kunja Dilavas Nayane Ribo Sada Jugala Rupara Se Aminaya Neribo Sada Jugala Rupara Se Brahma Hatyani Kanicha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Ani Kani Chapapami Brahma Hatyani Kani Pradakshina Pade Pade Jaya Tulasi Devi Jaya Tulasi Devi Jaya Tulasi Devi Jaya Tulasi Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Thank you very much, Ram Nityananda, for leading those prayers. So we'll say Mangalacharyan and then we will start to discuss some things in regards to Tulsi Maharani. Om Gyana Timiranda Siya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakujatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Manostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanjikapatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya From Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for joining. And yeah, there's a lot to discuss here because these prayers, which have been chosen by our founder Acharya and have been given to us to recite, and that we recite every morning in our temples and in many of our homes, hopefully, they're actually full of meaning. And actually, maybe what we'll do is we'll bring the verses onto the screen to begin with, and then we can go from there. So we do this. Let's see. Okay, so we have the words of the prayers that we chant to Tulsi Maharani. Maybe we can begin by actually understanding a little bit about who Tulsi Devi is. So it is explained in Shastra that she is actually an expansion of Srimati Radharani herself. And Tulsi Maharani has a very, very special place in terms of the eternal pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. It is said that literally all the leelas, all the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan, they are managed by Yogamaya, Purnamasi. So a very exalted figure who makes the arrangement for Krishna's pastimes. At the same time, Yogamaya has a specific department, and that special department is what is called, or we'll play another way. So basically that special department is a department for the confidential, the sweet confidential pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And so she's in charge of those specific, very, very confidential pastimes. So she makes the arrangements in that sense. Yogamaya is a Saki. Her father is named Chandrabhanu, and her mother is named Palara Gopi, and she's also married. So she has a husband called Mahipala. Krishna always feels indebted to Tulsi Devi because of the service that she provides. And therefore, when we pray to her, we're really praying to such a very confidential and eternal servant of the Lord. And so her grace is essential in order for us to be able to progress. So, for example, we see here this is here introductory verse. So this is the Tulsi Pranam mantra. And so when we're saying this particular verse, we're offering our respects. You know, we're offering our respects to Srimati Tulsi Devi, and we're recognizing two things in particular. One, as we just said, we're recognizing that she is very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, very dear to Krishna. And we're recognizing that she bestows, she has the power to bestow devotional service unto us. And this is also a general principle. When we talk about Gopi Bhatu Pada Kamalayo, das anudas, there is the idea that we are literally receiving something. We're being brought closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we're doing it by becoming the servant of the servants of the servants of the Supreme Lord. A very nice analogy was given, I heard this a few years ago. And the idea was like you have a telescope. So when you have a telescope, you have, the telescope is built with a number of different lenses. And that's what allows us to see something very far away, but to see it very up close. And we consider that each of the lenses are those devotees, those great servants of the Lord who are in that line, in our parampara line. So it's a very good analogy for the following reason. The more lenses that you have, okay, so you've got the lens right at the end, and you've got the lens that you're looking through right at the beginning. The more lenses that you have between you and the last lens, the more that your vision of what you are seeing becomes magnified. So actually, in a similar sense, the more we become the servants of the servants, many times removed, the more we actually intensify our feelings of connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is actually through the grace of the Guru line, and Tulsi Maharani is a great servant in that line. It is by the grace of such a line that we are able to come closer to Krishna. And it is by the grace of his pure servants that we are able to understand him. There's an understanding that we're pure devotees. When one has achieved the state of prema, in a sense, and in a major sense, the devotional understanding of what pleases the Lord becomes intuitive. There's a pastime, or there are many pastimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is seemingly angered by the devotees. But even though externally he's acting in one way, because of their pure, unalloyed devotion for the Lord, they are also having a different experience internally. They can actually feel that he's pleased. And we know this, we have some semblance of this, some reflection of this in the material world. You know someone very well, they may be pretending to be upset, but you can actually tell they're not really upset. You know, that you actually know them very well. You can see they're feigning it, but actually they're pleased. So in a similar way, as we connect with such great devotees and we beg for their blessings, we can also come closer to that understanding. So as is in the introductory verse, the actual translation is here. I offer my repeated obeisances unto Vrinda Srimati Tulsi Devi, who is very dear to Lord Keshava. O Goddess, you bestow devotional service to Lord Vishnu and possess the highest truth. So our mood is the mood of begging. The idea is that we want to cry for Krishna, but we cry to his pure devotees. They have the Lord. And by pleasing them, by engaging in service to them, then they will recommend us to Krishna. It is also said that Srimati Tulsi Devi, if she recommends anyone to the divine couple, then they will accept that person. So Prabhupada has perfectly constituted the morning program to give us a number of very specific benedictions through this worship. And let me just say here that when we worship Tulsi Maharani, and we can do so in a number of ways, we're able to gain her blessings. So how does she purify us? When we water Srimati Tulsi Devi, by rendering that service, we become purified. When we circumambulate Srimati Tulsi Devi, as you can see in the last verse, Yani Kani Chapapani Brahmahatya Dikani Cha Tani Tani Pradakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. By the circumambulation of Srimati Tulsi Devi, all the sins that one may have committed are destroyed at every step. Even, and this is interesting, the example given here, even the sin of killing a Brahmana, which is considered to be an extremely sinful activity. But her presence is so powerful, that it actually destroys even such sins. One of the points about the journey from Shraddha to Prema is that at the stage of Nishta, literally one's previous karma is destroyed. There's always some karma that's held, but even in the pure state, there's some karma that's held. But that karma is called Krishna karma. That Krishna karma is Krishna administering a certain karma directly in order to allow that living entity, that soul, to maintain their existence in the material body. Because if one had literally no karma whatsoever, you could not remain in the material world. So you have three stages. You have those who are non-devotees, they are completely under the sway of their karma. You have those who are pure devotees, they have no karma of their own, but something, if they're at prema, but something is being administered by the Lord directly just to hold them in their body, as long as he wants them to be held in their body. They have no attachment. And when I say no attachment, we mean technically no attachment. They're not attached to being here. They're not attached to being in the spiritual world. They're not attached to being in the heavenly planets or the hellish planets. The only attachment, as is stated in many verses, is to the causeless devotional service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, wherever they are. There's a series following Srila Prabhupada. I believe it was put together by Yadubar. And I remember we were abroad. We were giving a seminar at the Festival of Inspiration in New Vrindavan. This is some years ago. And in the morning program, they played one of the following Srila Prabhupada episodes. And in that episode, it was mentioned that Prabhupada had said that after he leaves this material plane, this earthly realm, this planet, he actually said to the devotees that he will go to the hellish planets in order to preach. So just something about the exalted nature of such personality. So he said that by watering Srimati Tulsi Maharani, we become purified. By circumambulation of Srimati Tulsi Maharani, we become purified. We talked about that particular verse here. When we offer her leaves to Lord Krishna, that is also another way in which we become purified. It's very, very interesting because Advaita Acharya, we know, as mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that he worshipped the Shila and he also was offering Tulsi in order to bring the advent of the Lord. By that worshipping of the Shila and also by offering Tulsi, Krishna became moved. Now it's interesting, it said that Krishna had already decided that he would come to the material world, but he had not set a particular schedule. So he had not set a particular time that he would actually descend. Advaita Acharya, as he made his offering, he prayed, he offered Tulsi, and therefore Lord Chaitanya came. And Advaita Acharya at that time had a particular meditation, because we know that Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu. He's actually the combined form of Sadashiv and Mahavishnu. Advaita Acharya had a specific meditation. His consideration is that I cannot give Vraj Prema. His consideration is that I can give the Prema that comes as a result of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Well, in order to give Vraj Prema, I need the Lord to come. So, let's see. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. This form of the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the combined form of Radha and Krishna. Specifically, Radha Bhava Duty Suvalitam. Krishna, but with the mood and the luster of Srimati Radharani. So he's called the Lord, and because of the offering, especially we emphasize in here, because he's offered Tulsi, the Lord feels indebted, and therefore the schedule is set for the Lord to descend here. And the reason why we're emphasizing this point, this meditation that he had about how he cannot give Raj Bhakti, is because when we look at these Tulsi prayers, and this is something, when I first came across this, it really struck me. I mean, if you look very carefully, what are we asking for here? Huh? We're asking to become, it says here, my desire is that you also grant me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So this prayer is infused with the aspiration to serve in Vraj Bhakti. You should be very conscious of that. Right? Bestowing your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. It's really important to understand what we're asking for in these prayers. What we're asking is that you, dear Lord, please give me this most confidential love for you. Not Vaikuntha Prem, not Mathura Prem, not Dwaraka Prem, Vraj Prem. The love that the most confidential servitors in the most confidential aspect of your spiritual reality, your spiritual kingdom. We're praying in these prayers to Tulsi Maharani to be engaged in that degree of sweetness. And of course, we achieve that through the regulated process of service to the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And because he's non-different from Radha and Krishna, by engaging in his mission, which is what? Nama Sankirtanaya Prayer, Yajanti Hisamedashaha. By engaging in his service, then that same one Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will reveal himself as Radha and Krishna, and therefore we will be able to enter into this very, very sweet spiritual kingdom of Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, so this sense of Krishna feeling indebted to Tulsi Maharani is one of the pulls that calls him to come to the material world in order to spread his mission, to deliver all of us, and to give us a chance to gain access to this most deep aspect of the reality, the real nature of life itself. And it's interesting also, I was just reading something earlier today. When we when we engage in these prayers, when we understand our aspiration, when we have a goal, it also changes our devotional life. What Prabhupada has expertly done in these morning prayers, he's set a sankalpa. He's actually given us the aspirations that we are meant to cultivate. There's a study, or there are various studies in the secular world by psychologists who have found that the fulfillment, or let's say the sense of satisfaction in life, doesn't actually come from the attainment or achievement of a goal, even materially. What they found is the satisfaction and the fulfillment is actually a result of a feeling that one is progressing towards an aspiration which is dearly held. So consider these prayers in that mood. This is an aspiration. We're aspiring to understand Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. As is said, O Tulsi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire, read, my aspiration is to obtain the service of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. This is not a cheap thing to attain. This service is not cheap to obtain because it's a very confidential service. I remember there was a class that we were present at. It was being given at the ISKCON London Temple by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And he was making the point that even when we go before the deities, when we, and we do this in our neophyte stage, when we go before the deities, we're approaching them in a mood of awe and reverence. Okay? We're approaching them in the mood of awe and reverence. So we're actually approaching them because it's that mood, we're actually approaching them in that mood of Lakshmi Narayan. Because Radha and Krishna are not in the ultimate sense approached in the mood of awe and reverence. We do that now. But as we become admitted to higher stages of spiritual progress, then we understand those same forms in a much more intimate, deep, and confidential way. So this Vraj Bhakti is our goal. Thus within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. This statement about vision is really important. See, we see the world, but we don't see the world. Pasyana pina pashati. The Shastra says that there are those who see but do not see. Why? Because we have this Chetodharpana Marjanam. The consciousnness, the mirror of the mind, the mirror of the consciousness is covered. Bhagavad Gita gives different examples, right? The mirror covered by dust, so many different examples. The smoke covered by fire, the fire covered by smoke, etc. The idea being that all of us, we are experiencing the world through a lens or through a mirror. And on that mirror is reflected the reality, but the mirror is also distorted. And what are those distortions? Those distortions are the anarthas. And where do these anarthas stem from? They stem from our desire to control and to enjoy. To control and to enjoy. By taking the role of the very people that we are eternally designed to serve. And as long as that mirror is distorted, we're no longer able to see the world properly. And because we no longer see the world as it is, it leads to a very bitter experience in the material world. It is very unfortunate that over this last year or so, because of the pandemic, many people have been faced with the degree of distortion. One form of the distortion is the idea that I can be happy just by running around doing so many different things in the world. So people who hold that idea, hold it very deep within their consciousness. When those things are cut off, then it's literally the world is stripped of those escapist activities and they're left with a little bit more of a stark view into their own internal consciousness. as devotees, we're very lucky. If we take to the process with depth, we're used to the inner journey. We're used to moving as much in inner space as we're used to moving around in outer space. And what do I mean by inner space? I mean perfecting our consciousness, cleaning the consciousness, reflecting on the pastimes of the Lord, reading, contemplating, meditating. How am I going to help to spread the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to please him so that he will give me entrance into the loving service to the devotees, the associates of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan Dham. So this vision is something that we're working on every day, or we should be working on. Every time we chant attentively, every time we read attentively, every time we serve sincerely, we are cleansing the mirror of the mind. And this statement is why we're meant to be cleansing the mirror. Within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. That means Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. By attentive chanting of the name, we will start to have more realization of the form, the Rupa. As we realize the form, we will also understand so much about the qualities, the Guna. And ultimately, we will see all of these things come together, because all of these different ingredients, these spiritual ingredients, they're fully present in the devotional feast that we call Leela. So that is the goal that we're looking for. And therefore we should also understand that when a pure devotee is chanting, at once they can perceive the pastimes of the Lord. And this is what the prayers are actually bringing out. In the next verse 4, I beg you to make me a follower of the cowherd damsels of Vraj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. Let's tune into this word, privilege of devotional service. It's not cheap. There's actually, I'll make it very real. I had this realization over the last few days. I was doing some research and I was able to understand something about my previous behavior and karma and so on. And I'll tell you honestly, what I understood as I was doing this research, I understood that literally any access to devotional service in this lifetime is just a complete gift. No qualification that there. In fact, to be honest, what I realized is that without the umbrella of devotional service, we would just be suffering so much misfortune. So much misfortune. But because of the devotional umbrella, and this is important also, to the extent to which we surrender, to that extent, we are free of our material karma. It does not mean that Krishna may not give it to us for our devotional purpose, for a devotional purpose. But to the extent that we are under the umbrella of devotional service, that means to the extent that we are surrendered, to that extent we're protected. And this is a promise that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadhamam prityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papibhyo mokshayishyami masuchaha. By that surrender, even if our karma, our material karma is very poor, we can still move through in an incredible way. And this is important. I want you to understand this. Don't do this as an experiment, but try to understand just within your heart that if you weren't a devotee, there are many things that would have beset your life which probably could have taken us completely under. This devotional service is a privilege because it is a gift. It is the gift that we do not deserve. And actually, to be honest, that's important. See, this whole series of prayers, it begins, I offer my repeated obeisances, right? And there's this mood as it goes through. So again, first verse, oh Tulsi and beloved Krishna, I bow down, I bow before you again and again. Why is there such an emphasis, nama namaha? Why is there such an emphasis of obeisances, of bowing down, offering respect? It is the mood of humility. In order to gain access to higher stages of devotion, one must be humble. The Trinada Pisa Nichano, Taroa Pisa Histuna, Amanina Manidina Kirtani Siddhahari. This verse in the Shikshashtakam, given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Acharyas have explained that each of the verses relate to different stages of devotional advancement. So the third verse relates to Nishta. And then you have Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim, Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye, Mama Jamani Jamanishri, Bhavatad Bhakti, Ohoi Tuiki Twayi. That fourth verse relates to Ruchi. Very, very interesting and coherent. So think about this. Nadanam Najanam. I have no desire for followers, right? Nada, wealth, dana. All of these things, I have no need for. I don't have a taste for them. Why? Because I've got taste for you, Krishna. So there's a replacement. In other words, param drisva nivartate. So the fourth verse relates to ruchi. So I no longer have ruchi for the world because I've got a taste for you. There's a replacement. There's a higher taste. Going back, the third verse, this Trinada P, this sense of humility, tolerance, respecting all others, and not desiring respect for ourselves. That humility, that third verse, and the humility that is espoused there is the invitation and the card that gets us into the realm of Nishta Bhakti. And the one thing that destroys the entire journey is offenses, criticism of the devotees. And where does that criticism come from? This is why it's so important, and it links to this idea of offering obeisances. Our tendency to criticize others is due to pride. Our tendency to criticize others is due to a feeling that we are superior to others. And the solution to that tendency to criticize others is to cultivate the mood of humility, and from humility comes gratitude and appreciation. So how does this work? Even when we say these prayers, this is why I was so excited to look at this. When we say these prayers mindfully, with an actual understanding, this is what I'm actually saying. And when we cultivate that particular mood, and let me be very clear here, I don't mean the mood of stupidity or foolishness. Humility is of the category of goodness. Denial of the truth, naivety, foolishness is of the category of ignorance. They're not the same thing. But when we cultivate humility, for example, someone gives us a hard time, we then have to consider, okay, on one level, on the internal level, how can I take this as a catalyst for my own advancement, because it has been allowed into my life space by who? By the very person who loves me the most. Those personalities who love me the most, Sri Sri Radha Krishna. And not to accept that they are the ultimate controllers of everything, to refute or to deny that truth is a form of covered atheism. So if they're the gatekeepers, especially if I've taken their shelter by sincerely and strictly following Krishna consciousness, then when this comes into my life space, then I can consider two things. One, how do I use this as a catalyst for my advancement? What is this meant to teach me? What is the lesson? And also number two, what is the correct response? So the response may be to address the issue. The response may be to interact with a particular person in a certain way. The response may be to get guidance on what is the best way to deal with this situation. We want to be always in a prayerful mood and always in a humble mood. I was listening to a lecture by one Prabhupada disciple yesterday. It was a brilliant lecture. He was talking about why people become addicted. And I remember seeing a quote from His Holiness Radha Maharaj on the same point. According to Vedic psychology, the reason why people have an addiction, the underlying tendency or the underlying cause of addiction or addictive behavior is that a person feels at a very deep level a lack of love and therefore a lack of satisfaction. And therefore, that is the underlying tendency in the consciousness that causes people to engage in material addictive behavior, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever it is. When a person, and it happens a lot in modern society because people do not have the samskars of a sense of unconditional love when they're growing up, which predisposes people to be more open to various types of addictions unless they're able to look into themselves and start to address these particular points, and especially by connecting themselves with a culture and a community of real loving exchanges. And when I say loving exchanges where we are truly loved, valued, while being encouraged to grow in our Krishna consciousness. And that is you can't take away the Krishna consciousness from the love. Because if there's real desire for the well-being of another person, real affection for the well-being of a person, one must be encouraging them in their Krishna consciousness. Without that, it is actually a sentiment. It's not real love, because it doesn't really deal with the ultimate well-being of the soul. Okay, let's look at a few other points in terms of this. So we talked about how Srimati Tulsi Devi, she can request on behalf of the jiva, please make this personality qualified to serve you. And if she makes that request to Radha and Krishna, then the divine couple, on the basis of her request, will actually agree. So every morning in our temples, we have the opportunity to make our requests to this personality. She appears in the world as a plant, but she is an eternal personality. And one of the things I like to request all of us to do is to approach her in that mood. It is said that the more that we personalize every aspect of our Krishna consciousness, the more it becomes incredibly transformative. And this is real. If you approach the books in a personal way, the books will speak to us. You'll read something and it's almost like the book is talking to you. This is what you need to know. This is the time that you need to know it. When we approach the chanting in the personal way, the holy name will reciprocate with us personally. When we pray in a very personal and sincere way, then the Lord will reciprocate through our prayers. So it's an extraordinary transcendental relationship that we're being offered an opportunity to build. So it's very interesting also because Tulsi Devi, who's also called Vrinda Devi, she holds such an exalted position, which is why we can beg her mercy to make us a resident of Vrindavan. So what does Vrindavan mean? Literally, Vrindavan means the forest of Vrinda, or the forest of Tulsi. So we know that Radharani is considered the queen of Vrindavan, but it is also sometimes stated that Tulsi Maharani is also considered the queen of Vrindavan, as she arranges for the coming together of Radha and Krishna. Vrinda also means group, as in groups of gopis, groups of gopas, etc. And Avana means one who nourishes and protects. Vrindavan. So this forest, the forest of Vrinda, and the role that she plays is extremely powerful, because Vrinda's role, as we said, Avana means one who nourishes and protects. So she helps to arrange for these wonderful pastimes, which are deeply nourishing to the residents of Vrindavan, deeply nourishing and pleasing to Sri Sri Radha and Krishna as well. So these are some considerations about the particular position of Srimati Radharani. I may just say one or two other things and then maybe we can open up for some questions. Okay, so let's go to this other point. So verse number 2, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. It is so important in our spiritual life that we must associate with advanced devotees, ideally pure devotees. There's a difference that comes from associating with our juniors, associating with our peers, associating with our seniors. All three relationships are important. We need to be able to express love in all three dynamics, so that we express love towards our juniors by giving guidance, compassion, direction. We express love to our peers through revealing the mind and through friendship. We express our love towards our seniors by inquiring, taking guidance, rendering service in that way. When devotees are advanced, this beginning of the second verse, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. A pure devotee can give Krishna. A pure devotee actually has everything, even though he or she wants nothing other than the service of the Lord. Why? Because aham tvam sava papibhyo moksha. No. Aham savasya pravavot matasavam pravatate iti matva bhajante mam Bhuta Bhavana vitaha. Who is Krishna? He is the source of all spiritual and material worlds. We know that everything is coming from him. So who is a pure devotee? A pure devotee is one who has obtained the Lord, one who has Krishna. Therefore, by equation, if they have Krishna, they have everything. If they have everything, they can bestow any blessing upon anyone. This is the point. Therefore, this statement, whoever takes shelter of you has his wishes fulfilled. So Tulsi Devi is like Chintamani. She is a wish-fulfilling personality. And thus, what we meditate on is also given here. So we're meant, what's implied by the very nature of the prayers is that we're meant to have the aspiration, as we say these prayers, we're meant to aspire for exactly what the prayers themselves are indicating. We're meant to aspire to obtain the service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in Vraja Bhakti. Okay, so we talked about the vision also. We talked about, let's see, the privilege of devotional service. Yes, and let's go to maybe one other point here. We'll go to one other point. So this point about the sins being destroyed. This part is called the Sri Tulsi Production and Mantra. Right? Yani kani chapapani brahmahatyati kanicha tani tani pradakshanti pradakshina pade pade. Our sinful reactions in life can come in various forms. One of the forms of our sinful reactions in life is our tendency to be distracted and inattentive in our devotional service. So as our sins are destroyed, as we remove the anarthas, as we come closer to a higher state of goodness, devotional service in goodness, then one of the features that we will experience, and this is one of the blessings that we will get as we worship Srimati Tulsi Devi, is that we will be blessed to become more attentive in our devotional service. Now there's a formula here. When a devotee is more attentive in their devotional life and one's consciousness is cleaner, the anarthas are being destroyed, then the attentiveness plus the purity of mind leads to absorption. This is actually how it works. When we are attentive in our devotional service and through practice, through mercy, we've eradicated, or we are in the process of eradicating the impurities in the mind, in the heart, ultimately, then we find that we become more absorbed in our devotional service. And I'll end on one last point before we open up for any comments or questions. Devotional service, in fact, everything, every type of activity in creation exists on a certain frequency. It has a certain vibration to it. When our consciousness is in a lower vibration, we are attracted to those things which are of a similar wavelength. In other words, if my consciousness is in the mode of ignorance, then we find that devotional service feels harder, because there's a greater distance between ignorance and Shuddha Sattva. That's the greatest distance. And therefore, the whole process becomes harder, and we're more pulled towards activities, objects, people who are in that lower mode. When my consciousness is in passion, I become attracted to those things in creation which are in the wavelength, which are on the same vibration as the mode of passion. And again, therefore, the enthusiasm for devotional service, it also wanes. However, as I engage in devotional service in the mode of goodness, as I live more in goodness, with an aspiration towards transcendence, devotional service becomes much easier and far more joyful. Because devotional service is on the platform of Shuddha Sattva. So now the question is, what is the difference between pure goodness and goodness? The material energy has the mode of goodness. That's one of the three energies. But the mode of goodness in the material world is tainted by two things. It has a drop of passion and a drop of ignorance. So what do I mean by this? The tainting of the mode of ignorance is that even though I'm in the mode of goodness, I still think that I'm my body. That conception that I am this body, that is the tainting of the mode of ignorance. And even if I'm in the mode of goodness materially in this world, I still think that I'm the controller and the enjoyer. That tainting, that idea that I can control and I can enjoy, that is the tainting of the mode of passion. In other words, the mode of goodness in the material world is not good enough. It's good, but it still has some mix of passion and ignorance. And when we release these last two drops of passion and ignorance from the material mode of goodness, then it's no longer material. Then it actually now comes to the platform of Shuddha Sattva. So that's the difference between the material mode of goodness and pure goodness. However, the material mode of goodness is still useful on the journey. How? We do these morning programs. We do the morning program, we do the morning prayers. By sleeping early and by rising early, we stand on goodness while we aim for transcendence. So not only are the prayers of the morning program a blessing, but these transcendental jewels are situated in the mode of goodness time of the day. So these prayers done in the morning, they give even more blessings. Not because they are in any way diminished at any time. They are always all powerful, but we are more receptive to their power in the morning. But there's also the fact that we are more receptive to their power when we do things, what? When we do things attentively, with knowledge, with awareness. Because now we understand the meaning of these prayers. When we say these prayers in knowledge, with understanding of what we are asking for, what we are requesting, then also we are approaching these prayers from a more devotional, a more pure mentality, so we can also realize the power and the blessings of these prayers far more deeply. Okay, so these are some considerations of these Tulsi prayers. So we want to encourage you, as with the prayers that we discussed previously, the Guru Puja prayer, the Guru Vastika prayers, we want to encourage you, learn the prayers. We want to encourage you, know what you're saying, know what you are requesting, and do an experiment. Even if you just take one of them, if you recite them in knowledge, you will see that you'll make much more progress in your spiritual life. You'll get a taste. One of the things that was exciting me so much recently, I could see how doing devotional service in goodness, it reinforces itself. You become conditioned to making more choices in the mode of goodness. You actually become more lucid in your ability to see and understand things in their proper place. And that includes ourselves, it includes others, it includes what we're meant to be doing. It's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. And these are all gifts which have been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So please learn the prayers. So when you come to do those prayers, whether it's in your own home or in a temple, you're doing them in knowledge, so you can make faster advancement, and we can all come to this platform of pure, unalloyed devotional service to the Lord, so that we can be free of the misconception that anything in the material world can make me happy. The more that we understand that, the more that we can wholeheartedly give ourselves to pure devotional service, and it won't even be a struggle. It'll be something that is done joyfully. It won't even be a struggle. It will be something that you'll feel incredibly blissful about doing. You'll actually feel blissful in your devotional life on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. Okay, so we'll stop there and we'll ask any questions or comments. Okay, I can see. So I'm reading, first of all, thank you for joining the call, Ram. So I'll read out your question and then we'll see how we can understand. From the introductory verse to verse 5, we see that there is a focus on desiring devotional service and that Srimati Tulsi Devi bestows devotional service. Why then does the verse 6 circumambulation refer to destroying sins as removing sins seem less relevant to the theme? Yes, it is less relevant. However, there is also a connection. You see, we cannot approach the pure devotional service of the Lord and his associates, they are completely pure. So we cannot approach them if we are sinful. If we have sinful habits, sinful tendencies, sinful desires, it means that we are still prisoners of the material world. And in particular, it means we're still prisoners of the lower modes. In his Jaladuta prayers, Prabhupada is praying to the Lord, and he's talking about how the world is attached to these modes of ignorance and passion. And he says something very interesting. He says, how will they understand your message? It's a very powerful point. How will they understand if we're so engrossed in the lower modes? How will we even begin to understand this message? So there is a connection. There is a connection. There is a need for this Cheto Darpana Marjanam, removing sins, removing the sinful tendency, so we can come to the platform of pure unalloyed devotional service. Not that destroying sins for the sake of destroying sins is the main goal. It is rather alluding to the power and the purity of such prayers and of such devotional service. This is also why you'll see throughout the teachings, you'll see this a lot through Bhagavatam. So, you'll read some pastime, and then the Bhagavatam will say, one who hears this pastime attentively will gain this particular benediction. Many of these benedictions are material, and actually, it says that the Bhagavatam is is for Paramahamsas. It is for those who are completely free of envy, which means free of material desires. So why is it talking about all these different benedictions, many of them material? It is to induce ones who are materially desirous to engage in that process of purification so that they can become free of those material desires. So that is the connection. So thank you for your question. Are there any other questions or comments, please? If so, you can either ask the question on the call, or you can put your question into the chat window. Let's give a few moments just in case there are any questions, because if there are not, then we may close the session today. Okay, so it seems that there are no other questions. Thank you for joining. I'm just going to give you the date actually of the next session, because Rajanath Gopal and myself were discussing just before this call. So we will have our next session, and I know that there will be an email sent out in advance. We will have our next session on the 24th of January. We'll confirm the time. It'll likely be around the same time. I saw one other question. After we offer Srimati Tulsi Devi the water, are we allowed to take any remnants left over? With Tulsi Maharani, the general standard is we make the offering of the water, and then what we will do is those any leaves that we take from Tulsi Maharani, we should offer those leaves to Krishna before we take them. Okay, so those leaves that are the manifestation of Srimati Tulsi Maharani, it is said that Krishna will not accept any offering without Tulsi. So those leaves should be offered to Tulsi. And it's interesting, since it was brought up, for those of us who worship Tulsi, and we should worship, even it doesn't have to be the plant if you feel that you're not in a position to regularly give that particular time and attention to the plant, but we can even have a picture of Tulsi Maharani. And we can pray to her, pray to Vrinda Devi. We can pray to the image of the plant of Tulsi Maharani. But for those who actually have the plant itself, the physical plant, one of the signs that our devotion is flourishing is that Tulsi Maharani, other things being considered, I mean, things being considered that she's in the right climate, etc., etc. Other things being considered, if she flourishes, we can understand that the bhakti is flourishing, that the devotion is in a healthy state as well. Okay, so we'll go to Kishan's question. Taking any leftover water in the cup. So normally, there's two things. You could either, so I'll just finish Ram's point, then I'll go to Kishan's question. So you can offer all the water first of all. If there's any leftover water, you can just keep that to the next time that you're offering water to Tulsi Maharani. Okay, so you don't want to drown her, but you should just generally have enough water that you make the offering. And then next time you can offer the rest of the water, you can just keep topping up the water that's offered. So you could do it like that. Okay, Kishan. When praying to Tulsi or the holy name, it's difficult to ask for devotional service when we already have so much on our plate. How do we overcome this, or do we change our prayer slightly? So when you're praying to Tulsi, the actual prayer itself is asking that. So it's not that you have to do something separate. You just need to be mindful that when I'm reciting the Tulsi prayers, I know what I'm requesting. Yeah? I want to obtain the service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. It's not a separate thing. Having that understanding of what you're actually doing, you are making that prayer, but now you're conscious that you are making that prayer, and then all benefits, all benediction will come in that sense. When you're praying, when we're chanting the holy name, you can just focus on the sound vibration. You can just, Tat Shrinu, Prabhupada says, just here. You know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So you can just hear, and because the holy names of the Lord have their own independent potency, those names, those syllables have their own independent Shakti, they will act. Yeah? If one is able to have a mood or a meditation, if that's not going to be a distraction for the person, then Prabhupada says you can chant just like a young child calling for their mother. So that means I'm still attentive, but now there's more of a mood of longing, a mood of desperation, a mood of begging, a mood of humility. And that we will gain even more in that chanting process. Because we are beggars, and the material world is a bad place to be. It is unfortunate that because of how sinful modern society has been, there are so many calamities, pandemic being just one of them. But we don't have to be in that same consciousness of the modern world. If we practice devotion sincerely, minus offenses, that's the one thing to be careful of. Devotional service without the offenses. If we practice that sincerely, everything in devotional service is so powerful. The process is so extremely powerful. It has unlimited potency because it's non-different from Krishna. We will quickly be delivered to high states of consciousness. So even we're in the world, there are challenges in the world, but we don't feel the same challenges in our consciousness. Okay, so thank you for that question. Any other questions or comments before we end? Okay, so we'll stop there. On the 24th of January, we'll have our next session, and we'll be looking at the Nishingadev prayers. As we know, we also do Nishingadev Aarti as part of the morning program. Thank you very much. It's great to see all of you. Very glad to be able to serve all of you, and we look forward to serving you at the next program or before as well. Have a good day, and if I don't see you before the new year begins, we wish you a very blessed 2021. Please look after yourselves, and please be enthusiastic in your Krishna consciousness. If we're enthusiastic in our Krishna consciousness, there's so many blessings to be had. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.